Hi, my name is Matt, and welcome to Education Exploration. On this podcast, we explore and learn about people serving in different career industries. The conversations focus on what it takes to reach our pathways and goals to educational and professional success. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Education Exploration podcast. My name is Matt, and I'm your host, and I'm incredibly excited about the person that I get to interview today. He and I have a lot in common, and I'm looking forward to our conversation. So if you wouldn't mind, can you please go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Alexander Yanez. I'm an assistant band director at Legacy of Educational Excellence High School in San Antonio, Texas, also known as Lee High School. I've been teaching for about 19 years now, and I've enjoyed every moment of it. Every experience that I've had, every job I've had. This is currently my fourth school that I've been teaching at. So I've, again, kind of gone around all the school districts in San Antonio. And I started off in San Antonio ISD, and then I moved over to Northside for a few years. And then now I'm in Northeast ISD in San Antonio, where I'm a product of the district. So very happy to be here. And that's it.
All right. Awesome. Yeah, appreciate that. So to kind of just get us started on our podcast today, this podcast is kind of designated to folks that are possibly looking at a career change or, maybe moving into a career for the first time. And so can you talk a little bit about what your experience was like as a college student? Kind of just, where did you go? What did you major in? And, kind of what you did in that time.
I actually didn't know where I wanted to go to college. I look at being a high school director. You always encourage the kids, apply for this school. When I was in high school, I had no idea. I thought I was just going to go to a community college, maybe even join the military. Being a musician, being in the band, I had a recruiter one time approach me and asked me, hey, have you ever considered doing the military band? And I thought about it. And when I went to a jazz festival at Southwest Texas, which is now Texas State University, I was approached by the directors there, and they offered me a scholarship to attend the university there. And I didn't think anything of it. And so I kind of just pushed it onto the side and still was just, I'm going to go here, go to San Antonio College for a few years, get my basics out of the way, and then let's see where I end up. And the director actually came and paid us a visit at my high school and just kind of said, hey, have you filled out the scholarship application for our university? And I was like, no. And so he kind of sat down with me and kind of just told me a little bit more about the university, about what they had to offer, kind of doing the recruiting thing, kind of really recruiting me. I went ahead and filled it out on the spot with him. And I went home that day and told my mom, hey, you know what? I think I'm going to go to college. And I'm looking at Southwest Texas. At that time, my musical experience was great in the aspect of a performer. I loved playing. I loved music. I loved writing music. I loved all the aspects of music, but I didn't really want to major in music. I had another passion for medicine. I was in the clinical rotation program at my high school. Mm-hmm. So, that's what I thought I wanted to do. From a young age, my family has a lot of medical history. And so, we were always going in and out of hospitals with my grandparents. And I always saw how the nurses, the doctors, how they cared for my family. And I liked that. I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to help people. I want to care for people. I want to give back to people. And so that's what I thought I wanted to do. So when I went to Southwest Texas, I was a music minor. Okay. And I took private lessons, and I was in the marching band. And that was what my scholarship was for. But my major was actually medical technology, because I was wanting to pursue a career in radiology. And so my college experience at first was overwhelming. I didn't know what to expect. Nobody in my family had attended college. So nobody really could guide me or help me on what to expect. So when I went in, it was something that I just went in blindly. But being involved with the music program there, being involved with the marching band, there's a ton of people there and a ton of people kind of, hanging out together. And so when I went there and did the music thing in the summer for our band camp, I met a lot of friends, and it was a great experience. It was something that I needed in my life. Mm-hmm. So I went ahead and continued to do the marching band for another 3 years there, and continued to take private lessons and be in the jazz band. So those were things that were my hobbies. And being a music minor, I was taking some of the music classes and learning a little bit more about music theory, about music history, and really appreciating music a lot more. And then on the other side, I was taking classes for my major, my biology class, zoology class, all those classes, and going to labs. And music was my outlet. It was my breakaway from my studies. So I really, really was passionate about it. It was about at the end of my second year, I believe I went ahead and decided to switch majors and go into music education.
Okay.
And my decision came strongly from where it was still based on the idea of helping people, mm-hmm. but helping people in a different way. When I was, of course, in high school, and then my first couple of years in college, I helped out at the hospital for a few months during the summers. But I realized that the environment for me at a hospital was it was just gloomy. I mean, you were helping people that were sick, that were, maybe on the verge of dying and when I went ahead and looked at the environment of a school, it's like, man, I get to be around young kids. At that time I was like, man, people my age, and really, really giving back that way and being in a positive environment for me. So that was one of the main things why I went ahead and switched my majors at that time.
Yeah, no, that's such a great story, Alex. And, I know I've even thought about this too, is that, you go into college thinking that you're wanting to pursue, this particular career field. And it's like, okay, but I've always been taught that you kind of learn a lot about yourself while you're in college. I mean, it's, in some cases, it's the first time you're out of your home. It's the first time, you have to, go out and buy groceries for yourself. And, you have, all these different opportunities, right? And so it's where, you go in thinking one thing, and then you come out totally being somewhat of a different type of person, right? And I think there are a couple of things that I really liked what you said, is that you've made your career out of what was passion, right? And it was like, you said it, right? It's like a hobby to you,
Yeah.
But you have taken that and what you love doing, and you have turned it into this successful career. And so for anyone out there that's listening, that's one of the things that I'm really adamant about. And when I tell, because I was in the classroom, as well, and I would tell my students that, you got to find something that you really love doing, right? And it's like, if you don't want to get up and go to work every day, then it's like, why are you doing what you're doing if it's not fun? And so I really appreciate you taking the time to kind of articulate that. And it takes a while to discover that.
Yeah. And like you said, I mean, when I went to college, that's one of the main things that I took out of college was I found who I wanted to be. And I surrounded myself with people that had the same kind of goals. In high school, it was, you followed the little cliques or your little friends that you had been, people that you had known since elementary school, middle school. And you really weren't able to define yourself because you kind of followed everybody else. But when I went to college, again, going somewhere where I really didn't know anybody, just, again, going in there and just not being shy, which is something that I've always had to deal with. I've always kind of been a shy person.
Same here.
But going in there and being forced to make friends and to talk to people and realizing that, there are people out there that are interested in what you have to say. And, just sometimes just making sure that you give other people that opportunity. For me, and that's what in teaching, I always try to do that with my students, is give them the opportunity to voice their thoughts. whether it be how they learn or whether it be what they're going through in their life. And as the educator, and I always look at my degree, people say, well, you're a music educator. Well, the word educator is also in my title. So it's not just about music, it's about educating our youth, and educating them in things that maybe they might not get at home. And a lot of the schools that I've been in some of the inner city schools in San Antonio, that has been the missing factor in those kids' lives, where things that I might have taken for granted, growing up in a household where I had my mother and father, where they guided me. And I had, of course, my father telling me how to be a young man and my mother teaching me how to be compassionate towards people. Some people don't have that in their life. So I've looked at that in my teaching, where, giving my students an opportunity to voice what they're going through, and not to be afraid, and I try to give them, it's rough for some of them because some of them go to school and they're just taught to sit there, be quiet and listen. And in our classroom, even though it's music, I try to give students the opportunity to be vocal on what they're feeling, whether it's, hey, Matt, how did the band sound to you? And putting them on in that situation where they're like, but, also in giving them encouragement to say, hey, did they sound good? Did they sound, what did you hear? And just kind of give them pointers to start up the conversation. But other than that, who knows? His other classes, the teacher may never call on him. So he never experiences what it's like to be vocal or to speak out. And he might go his whole 12 years or 13 years of public school and not ever be able to experience that. And so what has he really learned?
Absolutely. And so this is a great segue to one of the questions that I had for you was, so what are some of the skills that you were able to develop in college that has kind of helped you in your career? I mean, it's one of those things where, like, I even thought about this earlier today. I was thinking to myself, I'm like, there are so many things that I wish I would have done differently in college. Like, there are different types of, skills or whatever that I wish I would have honed at such a young age, because it would make my adult life so much easier. And so if you can kind of just talk, and it could be like, maybe top three or, however you want to frame it. But what were some of the things that you did learn over the course of your college career?
Well, I mean, for me, college it taught me how to think and how to ration certain situations, where, and I think that's the biggest thing that I took from college. And I look at some of my professors where in my classes, I learned all of the pedagogy, all of the methods, all of the, formulas, everything that they teach you in college out of the books. But I really didn't take that information and maybe the same way that my peers did. I took it in another way where it's like, how is this going to apply to me? And I look at that process of thinking for me, and it's helped me become who I am, where any situation is a good learning experience, whether it's a bad situation, whether it's a good situation. And when I was in my music classes, I remember one professor always saying, what we're helping you is by giving you resources, we're giving you tools to put in your toolbox. But what you do with those tools is up to you. I always kind of look at that and I'm like, sometimes there's certain situations where, going back to the toolbox reference, you might not have the exact tool. You might have to work on what you need to work on, but you need to be innovative and creative and figure out, well, if I use these two tools here, then I can accomplish my task. And so that's the way I look at my teaching, is I'm always learning. Every year, this, again, like I said, this is my 19th year. When I started my first year to the end of last year with everything that happened, it was totally different. It's been totally different every year. I've always tried to take the reflections of what I've done in the past year, and I even get them from my students sometimes. And of course, you get the stock answers. Well, I did this, I improved in this. But sometimes you do get those points where it hits you, and you're like, man, okay, that really impacted that class, or that really impacted this student or these students. And I'm gonna continue to use that, but I'm gonna see how I can grow with that. What things that I can add to that. To those students already got that concept, but how am I going to help them continue to grow? Not just, okay, they got it, let me move on and let me get how am I going to help them continue to grow. But going back to your original question, again, just learning how to think, and learning that you don't have all the answers. But, back in the day when I first started, it was like, hey, team up with the veteran teacher on campus that knows everything and learn from them. But now, with technology, you just Google everything. I've learned that from the kids. Just Google it, But that's another thing, just, not being afraid to not know everything. And know that even the people that you feel like, man, they know so much. Oh man, this person is so smart. And I always refer to myself. I'm like, people might think that I'm wise or, or smart, or it's not because I'm smart. It's because I've made so many mistakes and I've just learned from my mistakes. And so, but it's also been from making sure that I do ask questions. And I think sometimes people feel like they're afraid to ask questions because they don't want people to feel that they are not in the knowing. So I think that especially with new teachers, I think a lot of them come in and they want people to think, oh, well, you already know everything. And it's not like that. It's you go in there and you try to do what you can to be a part of the team, but bring your experiences to the situation, bring your experiences to the team to make the team better.
Yeah, no, all those are great. Points, and it is tough. And I really like the way you said that you've learned from your mistakes and those have turned into experiences, right? And it's like, when you've been in a career for as long as you have, it can almost kind of feel like, and it's so unique because education is different. Like, it's so hard to explain to somebody that's not in education that no 2 days are ever really the same. And
Right.
That concept is really kind of challenging sometimes for people to understand that, especially, I'm going to be interviewing other people that are in different industries. And that's one of the things I'm going to bring up is like, what does your day look like? Because I know what I know, but I have never spent any time in the medical world or in the tech world or anything like that, so I'm really curious to see how that compares, over time.
And it's funny that you say that because I think, if you look at any kind of profession, and I think the people that are, in my opinion, that the people that are successful in their professions is because they understand the concept of servitude, to serve. I look at my friends that are not educators, and they always kind of ask me questions about education, how the kids are, and they like the stories that I have to tell them about the way students are, and it's great because it helps break the ice at any parties or any gatherings when I tell them I'm a teacher. But when we really talk about what we do, it all comes down to how we serve. Whether you're in business, customer service, education is customer service. You've got people from all different backgrounds, different environments, that learn differently. And you can't just do things one way. That's why each year it's so challenging and so different. And that's why, again, for me, I've been able to do it as long as I have because it's like that. I don't think, and one of the things that one of my principals that I work for told me was, she goes, you want to go through your life and make a career and establish a career and not just establish a job. And she always used to kind of refer this to some of the students. She goes, you don't want to just get a job when you graduate. A job is working at fast food. A job is, maybe working in retail, something that you do to earn money to support your family. But like you said earlier, a career is something that you can be passionate about, that is not work, but that you're blessed to be able to get up every morning and say, I'm excited on what today brings because I have no idea what it's going to be today. What problems am I going to have to solve today? What situations am I going to have to deal with today? And that's one of the things when I start every morning, my mornings pretty much start off, greeting the kids as they come in, and this is even before school, because as a band director, you see your kids before school, during the school day, during lunch, and after school. Because they're always hanging out in the band hall. So I do get the opportunity to see most of my students before school, whether if it's because they're coming in and dropping off personal items or they're just coming in to hang out. But for me, it's getting to see how my day's going to go. When the kids come in the morning, I'd say, hey, Matt, how are you doing this morning? Okay. Then I know, okay, there was something that happened in the morning that, either he has a test throughout the day or something. And that's when I can come back to him maybe during class or if he comes in during lunch. Hey, Matt, how was your day today? oh, well, today, and I'm like, okay, he resolved his issue, or his day went better throughout the hours. Or it might be a situation where I'm like, hey, you know what, there's some red flags here. Matt's not being Matt. How can I approach this? Maybe I can go up to him and just say, hey, Matt, something's bothering you, man. I'm here to listen if you need somebody to talk to. Or if you really feel that it's something, and again, with the years of experience that I have, sometimes I can tell that something's really bothering a student. And then I just, I notify the proper people on my campus, whether it's a counselor or whether it's another teacher that I know has a good relationship with a student, or if I feel that it's something that the parent needs to know, calling or emailing the parent. Emailing is probably the best thing nowadays. Everybody can get their email very quickly. People see a phone call from the school and they tend to ignore it. But if they get an email, they'll tend to read this. But yeah, I mean, that's something that I try to do with my students, is always just see what they're going through and how their days, and just having that and building that relationship with them. And I have some kids that you give them that inch and they take that mile. They come in, oh, this is what I did this weekend. And sometimes you're like, hey, I don't know if you should be telling me these things, or, hey, that's great, but they're so excited to share sometimes, and so excited to just talk to an adult that might listen to them versus, a parent that's always judging, or, somebody else that's always judging what they say.
So it's interesting, and this is going to kind of segue to my next question. So if you can kind of give our audience, just take a few minutes or so to just talk about, like, what is it that you do? Like, what does an assistant band director do? And you've taught at the high school level your entire career, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so if you can just talk to us a little bit about what does your kind of day look like, but with the caveat that not in our current situation. So those of you that are listening to this, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about when I say that.
Yeah, again, like I said, my typical day starts off greeting the students as they come in. And my role, again, where I work with two other directors. Our head director, oversees pretty much the logistics of the program and does all the paperwork. And then the other assistant director, he and I kind of team up on certain situations, whether it's class instruction, getting in front of the class and running the rehearsal, or other things like inventory or uniforms, organizing those kind of things. But when we all get together as a staff, our head director is very open to what we have to bring to the table and suggestions on running the program, whether it's show design or whether it's a meeting with the boosters, whether it's how to spend funds. So even though my title is as an assistant, I'm just lucky that in the current situation that I'm at, we all kind of just say we're all the directors. There's nobody above anybody, and that we all just work together, and we all just, whatever needs to get done, we all kind of just say, hey, I'll take care of this. That way you guys don't have to worry about it. And that's the way I look at my role, is making sure that I take things off the head director's plate, so that way he can sit there and think about what he needs to do to better the program. What things might he need to do financially to help the program, or logistically to help the program, because he's the one with the ultimate decisions. For instance, like last year, about 2 years ago, I think, we had some issues with, we have a rig, an 18-wheeler, a trailer, I should say, but we don't have the rig to pull the trailer. And so we did truck rentals. And for all of us, when we get something, when we get an email, when we get something that we need to do, we do it right then and there, because we'll forget. So that's just the way all three of us are. We're like, hey, did you see that email about this? Let's take care of it right now before we forget. So on something like that, whether it's buses, like I order the buses for the whole marching season during the summer when we get our schedule. As for me, it's the sooner the better. So we order buses, we order the rig. But that year we ordered the rig for every game, and we were having issues with them not having a rig for us. It would come to the point where the day of a game, one of our boosters would go pick up we would hire a driver, and they would go pick up the rig, and there was no rig there. The company said, well, we don't have a rig for you. We're like, well, we reserved it from you guys. So that kind of headache is what the head director had to deal with. So he dealt with that, and we were just like, hey, you take care of that. We'll take care of everything else for the game. So that's what I've taken kind of on in my role, where I kind of look to see what needs to be done and I just do it. Also, the same thing with running rehearsals. We all kind of just are always looking. My role that I've always kind of taken is the endurance of the kids. If we're outside, during the summer, it's 105 out in the asphalt field, and I'm looking more at the health of the students. I'll go up there and tell the other directors, hey, you know what? I think we're done for this rehearsal. Or, hey, I think we need to take longer water breaks because the kids are really, really suffering with the heat today, or the kids, they're not there mentally because it's just so hot. So I'm on the field kind of just observing all those things and just making sure that the students are taken care of, especially since we practice on an asphalt field. It does get a lot hotter than what the temperature might say. So that's another thing that I kind of always just kind of taken upon myself, of just being on the field with the kids, looking at how the rehearsal's running from the inside of the program, the inside of the band. And I mean, I'll go up to the tower every now and then and kind of just look at if some of the things that I've suggested or some of the things that I've noticed are getting fixed. But like I said, I just always look for points to address and to improve on. Because again, all of us feel that it's about the kids. Mm-hmm. What experience are the kids getting from being in our band program? And what are they learning? So making sure that every opportunity that they have to be together, to rehearse, to perform, that it's a good learning experience and it's a good memory for them. So I'm always just looking for anything that might come up. I'm always, looking at a situation and like, well, A, B, and C could happen. So we got to be prepared for A, B, and C. So I'm always just kind of looking forward. And again, with my years of experience, it's kind of helped me with situations that can happen at, a football game or a marching contest. We've this, and this happens, or we have this, and this, just in case it does rain. So I'm always just looking ahead just to make sure that the kids and the parents that are with us at those games and contests and are taken care of, and that we do have a plan when things like that happen. So like I said, I'm always just kind of I'm in the background, but I'm always just, my wheels are always turning about what things might need to be done. And then also jotting little notes down. Hey, if we go to a different stadium, hey, we went to, I know a couple of years ago, we would do a contest in Austin at Kelly Reeves. I had never been there. None of us had never been there, but, I jotted down, things. Hey, this is where we park. This is where the students load. So, and if that opportunity ever came up again, we had a plan. We knew the routes. We knew the flow of the contest and things like that. So those are things that I do because I'm not worried about a lot of those other things that a head director might worry about. But I take those notes that will help us improve our planning for those contests and those situations that we're always put in.
All right, awesome. Yeah, so that was great, Alex. I really thank you for sharing that insight and that whole perspective into kind of what you do, as an assistant band director. So one question that I have for you is, what kind of advice, or what type of advice, I should say, would you give to someone that is potentially looking to either, one, become an educator, or two, specifically a high school band director?
Specifically for high school, I would say, something that they would need to work on as a part of themselves, or something just to be prepared to deal with.
I think just if someone is interested in, they're coming fresh out of college and, they've been a music education major, like what can they expect to kind of do as an assistant band director? And, or if a high school student is thinking about becoming a band director, like what are the steps that you would advise somebody to take, or what is it that they would need to know in order to get into your particular career field?
Again, I'll start off with the high school student. As a high school student, just taking every opportunity that you can to maybe work with your peers. I think that's an important thing. And that's one of the things that I know in our leadership team, I really try to make that a big deal, where, working with students, working with other people, and really trying to expose them to a lot of leadership opportunities. So I think for me, I look at my high school career, I never held any kind of leadership position or, even aspired to be any kind of student leader. I just wanted to play my horn. And I know that there's students that are like that they don't want to deal with the responsibility maybe of being that person to tell people what to do, especially at that young age. They don't want to go against the grain. They just want to have fun. So as a high school student, it's just, just because you don't have the title of a leader doesn't mean that you can't take that role. If you're a senior in high school, helping some of the freshmen, being that person. I always tell my student, and it's funny that our school name did change to Legacy, and I was like, leave your legacy. When you're in the program, you want to leave something that when the freshmen that come in, if you're a senior, when the freshmen are seniors, they always talk about you. They talk about you to people that don't even know you, but they're like, when I was a freshman, there was a senior named Matt, and man, he was like the coolest guy. He helped me out so much. I was so nervous about this, but he kind of helped me. And the kids have no idea who Matt is, but that senior talks about Matt like he's just like this incredible person. So that's leaving that legacy, leaving that impression on a person's life, because it's life-changing. That person, knows what it feels like, to have a person like that help them and maybe just be there for them or listen to them, guide them, help them. So as a high school student, of course, taking any opportunity that you can to help somebody and see if that's something that brings you satisfaction. If it's like, man, I felt like I did something. I felt like I accomplished something helping that student, then maybe education is for you. I think a lot of people that I went to school with that were music majors and winded up switching in college to not being music majors because it wasn't what they expected. So they chose music education because of the environment that they were in high school and maybe the responsibility and the role they took. But when they got to college and they realized that there's a lot more to it, it's not just, are you a good musician? Are you first chair or second chair in your program? Were you drum major? None of that really matters. What matters is how dedicated you're going to be to learn the methods and the strategies and the content of what you're going to be teaching, because that's ultimately what we do. There's so many ways to teach music. There's not one specific way. And so you have to go in with a very open mind. Now, for somebody in college that's going to graduate and everything, and I went through this, where I graduated and I was like, man, I'm going to change the world. I'm going to go to a program and I'm going to, just be this awesome director and my band's going to be great. You don't get placed in situations like that very often. You might end up in a program that's struggling, that, the students might not be motivated to do things. You might not have 100% support from your admin, or your equipment might not be new. Or there's a lot of factors that come into that. And I take my first experience of going out into the field right after college. It was nothing that I expected. The program wasn't bad. It just wasn't what I expected, coming from, the high school program that we were a part of, going to a really good music school for college where everybody wanted to learn, everybody wanted to be good on their instrument. And there were people that just were naturally talented and that just made, I remember, when I went to college, I'm kind of going back and forth here, but when I went to college, I remember listening to a bassoon player in the college band. And I was like, man, that doesn't sound like so-and-so from high school. And I really didn't take into the consideration that so-and-so in high school was just super good on the instrument. And I never knew that instrument could sound that way. So it was just, my experiences didn't prepare me for my first job. And that's the thing, you need to make sure that every situation is a good learning experience for you. So my first job was a good learning experience because it was something that I didn't expect it. And it was tough. It was tough because I was not only the band director, but I was also in charge of the orchestra and choir. And that certain situation, I might have been in a unique situation also, because when I graduated, for all of you that are going to graduate in December, that's when I graduated. And luckily enough, I did find a job. And, I was just so happy because I was like, man, I found a job. It was the middle of the year. I didn't think I was going to find a job. I thought I was going to have to, go work at, a restaurant or something just to make money. But I did find a job. But the job that I got, it was vacant for a reason. And I went ahead and like I said, I went ahead and took it. But the experiences that I learned early on in my career classroom management, because, as a fine arts director or teacher, the core teachers will always say, well, you get the good kids, you get the kids that want to be there, and my first job, I had to do several classes that were, I don't even know how to explain these classes, but there were classes for students that needed assistance in just being in school. It seemed like there was no curriculum for them. It was a class where they would come in and sit down and take a journal, and they were supposed to write off of a prompt and write in their journal and read a book. And when I took the position, like I said, I was replacing a substitute that had been there from the beginning of the year to the middle of the year. So the classroom setting had already been established. So for those that are in education, when you don't lay down the law on the first day of school, it's hard to get that class back throughout the year. So that classroom environment had already been established with that substitute. The substitute would come in, sit down, not have any kind of structure in the class, and just let the kids do whatever they want. I came in, and make a long story short, I had to learn how to take back control of the class and instill in them the structure that they needed. Now, a lot of them did fight me, but again, like I said, I learned early on in my career that classroom management is very important, and that students, young adults, like structure. Even though that they might fight it, they like structure. If they come into a classroom and they know exactly what to do, if there's structure, they know when I come in, I need to sit down, I need to do 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to get started. They fight it sometimes, but they like that structure. They like to know what's going to happen. If there's no structure and they come into a situation in a classroom and there's no structure, they look lost. They're confused. They don't know what their purpose is. And I learned that, like I said, early on, that if you establish that structure and that classroom management early on, that the students will have a better time in your class, and they will have a better learning opportunity in your class.
Cool. Okay. So awesome. Well, thank you so much, Alex. I appreciate you joining me today. And it's been a wonderful treat to be able to talk to you. And, you and I we go way back. We went to high school together. And I think when I came in as a freshman, you were what, a junior or a sophomore? Can't remember.
I was a junior.
Okay. Yeah. And you kind of, just for our audience, Alex was one of my really great friends in high school. And, when I came into the band program, it was almost like, you kind of took me under your wing, and you kind of helped me learn, about the systems and the processes of high school and the marching band and, just life in general. So, I really do thank you for everything that you've done for me. So to kind of close our podcast for today, I always want to encourage my guests to kind of just share some inspiring words for the audience. And you can take this in a direction however you feel comfortable. You can speak to the new teacher or whoever, really, it doesn't really matter. But what would you say to kind of give somebody some uplift as we in the education world move into our 2020-2021 school year?
I guess to a new teacher, I would just say, use your resources. Don't be afraid to not know what you should do. Use your resources. Use the person that's in charge of your department head. I think that a lot of young teachers come in, and with all the different policies, that's one thing that the colleges, and it's impossible, but for a college to be able to teach you the procedures, because every school district is different. Here in Texas, we have the UIL. They didn't teach me that really in college. They didn't teach me how to sign up a band for UIL and how to sign up a band for our students for solo and ensemble. I learned that from the directors that were in my district. If you come out of college and you're a head band director of a middle school or head band director, the only director in the district, there's no like, well, he's new, let him slide. No, but you need to go out and ask. And that for me is the biggest thing is don't be afraid to ask. And I think the music profession or the teaching profession, you always have people that are willing to help. There's no one that's really going to say, oh, well, no, you go and figure it out on your own. It's not like in a corporate world where, well, I can't help you because you're my competition. It's never like that in education. You're always going to have people that will help you and guide you through your first year. And, I don't want to say it's going to get better. I like I said, I moved schools for different reasons, but I think for me, I always thought about my personal life as well. It wasn't always about what I'm going to do in my career. And I think as band directors, especially as high school band directors, there's a big turnover on band directors where, you have a band director that might be at a school or even in the profession for a few years, and then they go find something else. I think the big thing right now is real estate. You're band director for 7 or 8 years, and then it's just too much work. It's just so many hours, and you go into real estate instead. You have to remember you do have a personal life, and you have to prioritize your personal life from your work life. And you have to remember that work will be there for you tomorrow. Your whatever it is that you were working on at work. It took me several years to learn this, though. That it'll be there for me tomorrow. When it's time for me to just to pack up my stuff and go. Because I have my wife that I come home to and my kids. But when I was young and it was just me and my wife, I was just like, oh, well, she'll understand. But as a young teacher, you have to remember that you do have a life, and you should live your life and just be grateful for the opportunity that you have with your career. But don't forget about yourself, because the only person that's going to take care of yourself is yourself. Nobody else is going to make you go to the doctor, and I talk to a lot of my colleagues about it. Some of them like, oh, well, we don't have time. It's like, well, if you don't make time, you're going to regret it later. There's something that, you have to take care of yourself. And that's something that I always tell, the student teachers that we have, remember that you do have a life, and don't spend all your time up at the school. Because again, you can always find something to do, and I was that person. I was always up there, finding things that I needed to work on, working with individual kids. But when it was all said and done, for me, family is a big thing. And, I wanted to be there for my family, because that was my number one priority is my family. So remember that you do have a life. It's not all about band, or it's not all about your work, and enjoy it. Enjoy the experiences that you will go through, but don't forget who you are, and don't forget where you came from.
Thank you for listening to the podcast. Be sure to subscribe. Episodes are available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. Follow me on social media using the handles @education_explode or @MattEdutech. We'll chat again soon.